What's up, guys? Programming video number 1. Alright, I told you guys we were going to start from square one, and I meant literally square one. So we're going to start today with data types in C#. You can't do anything in programming, anything at all, without knowing what your data types are, what you do with them, how they're used, how you assign to them, everything. So without further ado, let's get started. I know you're not here to look at me, you're here to look at the code, so let's go to Visual Studio. Alright, so when you download Visual Studio, this is the 2017 Community Edition of Visual Studio. In Visual Studio, we're going to be doing all of our work here, so if you want to go download it, if you want to follow along with me, that'll be great. If you want to download it later or whatever, you do you, I'm going to do me. So right now, we're going to start a brand new project, and to do that, we go up here to File, New, Project. Pretty simple, right? Alright. So when you first download Visual Studio, you're going to be prompted with these options. Do you want Visual C#, Visual Basic, C++? All these basically are going to be tick boxes that you can choose what you want to download. For the course of these tutorials, when you're going to be working with me, I'm going to be using either C# or Visual Basic. So if you want to go ahead and grab those two, you'll save yourself a minor headache in the future when we switch to VB. But anyway, we're going to go Visual C#, and for the base of this, since we're just covering data types, we're not doing any output, any input, anything like that. We're just going to choose a, where's it at? We're looking for console application. Can't sort by name either. Console, there it is. And we can name it whatever we want. For this one, I'm going to name it data type tutorial. And OK. When you click OK, it's basically going to bring you to your code window, and it's going to let you start from there. All right. So here's what gets created. So in the very first part, let me explain a few things here so you know what actually is on the screen. This using right here, this blue using word, is a keyword. Using means we're importing libraries, which means other code banks from either built-in with Microsoft. System is a Microsoft built-in platform. So basically, anytime you see a using system or using something like that, using is importing another library of code that's already created, so you don't have to create it for yourself. Using system gives you access to all of the C# based system functionality. Collections generic get into types like arrays and lists and stuff like that. That's going to be a few lessons from now, so don't worry about that. We don't actually even need that right now. System.link is another data type storage warehouse kind of library. We don't need that right now either. We'll go. That's way on down the road, but we'll get over that one day. But that day is not today. So system.text, we're going to need system.text because it's basically a add-on to one of the data types we're going to cover. So we're going to leave that. System.threading.task is basically your timers, your wait processes, and stuff like that in order to make the program hang while you're waiting for, say, user input or waiting for the program to do something, and you want to make sure enough time has passed for it to process whatever it needs to process before you move on to something else. So we're going to get rid of that. Alright, so namespace. Namespace is important. In our Solution Explorer right here, the name of our project, our solution, which is basically a solution, is your main case file. It has everything down in it. Think of it as, those Russian Trisca dolls, Patriska, whatever you call them, the ones that stack inside each other. Okay, so your solution is the big fat one, right? It's the biggest one. Then inside of your solution, you can have multiple projects. Our first project is Console App 2. That's the one we're making right now. So the Console App 2 would be your project. That'll be the one that's right inside the fat one, which is your solution. And then inside that, you can have all these types of files. So they're just basically a file hierarchy. Alright, so what we're working in right now is solution data type tutorial. The project is Console App 2, and the program, this file right here, is program.cs. Anytime you create a base console application, the default file that's going to be your main file is always going to be named program.cs. You can change that. It doesn't matter. That's just Visual Studio's default. Okay, so namespace, Console App 2, that's basically the name of your project. Alright, your classes are basically snippets of code that are set to run certain things. So class program, we're not going to have separate classes. That's a tutorial later on. But classes are basically, like I said, your shells that can run separate bits of code. Inside of here, this is called a function or a method. Different teachers will tell you different things. I like to call them methods. Functions I call that JavaScript functions, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, this is your main method. So basically, when you hit play or start up here, the big play button, whatever's in here is going to get executed. So if we say, you're not going to know what this is, but system dot. When you say system, we're calling this system library up here, and dot is saying we're going to use something inside system. Dot console, which is we're in a console application, so you want to use the console project in the system namespace. System.console.write line or write. Basically, these are going to write out to your console application. Picture a console application. A good way to picture that is your command prompt window. You know, your little black box you can type key codes in. That's basically what a console application is. So if we were to do write line, and I was to say, welcome to the tutorial, that's basically going to print out welcome to the tutorial in the console at the bottom when you hit play. However, you'll notice right here we have a red exclamation or a red squiggly line. That's how Visual Studio denotes errors. In C#, every time you write a line that's not a method or a class or a namespace, you notice in the namespace, the class, and the method, they all have opening and closing brackets. Whenever you're going to have any kind of instance or any kind of area in the code that's going to hold code for you to get executed in C#, it has to be a method, class, or namespace, and it has to have brackets to denote the beginning and the end of the method or class or namespace. But whenever you're writing lines of code inside said methods or classes, they always in C# have to end with a semicolon. Notice the error went away. Now, if we were to run this, if I hit start, it's building. It's the first time it's building, so it takes a few seconds. Alright, so you couldn't see it. Let's see if I can get it. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it. Let's see. I'm going to do something, and I'm going to explain to you what I'm doing, but it's going to be in a lesson we cover later, just so you can see what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to explain this later on a different tutorial in greater detail, but the only reason I'm adding this line now is so you can see the console box and it doesn't just flash. Because as soon as this line executes and it gets to here, it realizes, hey, this is the end of the main method. There's nothing else to run. Terminate the process. So it kills your console application instantly. So what this line does, this is a sleep timer. It's basically a wait timer, and it's denoted in milliseconds. So basically, I'm telling this to wait 10 seconds. Each millisecond is 1,000 seconds. Like 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So 10,000 is 10 seconds. This way you'll be able to see the line. So we're going to build it. See? Welcome to the tutorial. Now in 10 seconds this will close, but I'm going to go ahead and close it because you guys can see what the purpose of the systems and the consoles and lines of text are. Alright, so we are going to get rid of this. Alright, sorry about that. Anyway, we're going to get rid of this and we're going to go into the data types. Okay, so we have, in today's lesson, I have 6 basic data types that I want to cover with you. There's a few more than that, but in programming, over the course of the 10, 12 years I've been coding, I've learned that there's really only 6 or 7 you're going to use that are base data types, and the rest of them are not really, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really, I'm not going to say they don't matter because they each have their specific application, but over the course of programming, they don't really matter that much. Hey, somebody just followed me on Twitch. Nico1117, I appreciate it. Sorry for the volume interruption there in the programming tutorial, guys, but we'll get what's going. Anyway, so we have 6 basic data types. We have string. A string is basically any text line that you're going to use. Like when I put in that console outline a few minutes ago, welcome to the tutorial, you notice how it was in the quotes. That means it's a string. It can accept any kind of text, letters, numbers, special characters, anything. A string is a string. Alright. Then we have integers, or in the keyword case in Visual Studio is going to be denoted as int, int. It's just an abbreviation. It stands for integer. These are your numbers. Int, you have to name it. It's a variable, equals 1. And end it with a semicolon. String. There we go. Alright, so before I can get into data types really well, I feel like I'm missing a point right here with you guys. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to explain to you what variables are, because you need to know what variables are before you need to know what data types are. Variables are your items that's going to hold your data that can change, or your basically any type of data you want in your program. Say if you have a form on the web and you're filling out your name, email, and address, well, each one of those boxes you're filling out is a different variable that's going to get assigned to in that program. So string str is basically empty right now, but it's a string, and str is the name of our string variable. We can use it in other places. Our integer variable, int number, equals 1. Number is our variable. We can use it wherever we want inside this method. Just like, yeah, we can use them anywhere inside the main method. So that's what a variable is. A variable is used to hold data. Data types are used to say what type of data that variable can hold. Okay, that should be a pretty good explanation. I hope you're with me. If you have any questions on that, throw a comment down in the box and I'll let you know. Okay, string int. So the next one we're going to go over is called a double. A double is basically any number that's got decimal points. It can hold up to 2 decimal points or 4 depending on the case. But if you're getting anything over 1 or 2 decimal points, there's another data type you'd like to use for that because it's more accurate. You'll understand what I mean by accuracy, because double has some built-in rounding that's that if you're dealing in real finite numbers or you're dealing with money, like if you're dealing with, I'm talking money down to the tens of thousands of pennies. If you want it that specific, you really don't want to use double. You want to go with this next data type that I'm about to tell you about. But anyway, double is basically your basic decimal placed integer, your basic decimal placed number. So our next one is called float. It's basically the same thing. It's a decimal number, but it's the one that's more highly accurate. If you're dealing with anything and you got to know specifically, I mean, dead on, what your number is going to be without any kind of rounding or whatsoever, you want to use floats because it's highly accurate and it can go to like several thousand decimal places. Maybe even more than that. I have to look it up to be exactly sure. But it goes so far on decimal places that you're never going to use that many decimal places, if you know what I mean. Okay, so our next one is car. Car is any, basically, dang it. Trying to remember how to use car right. It's been a while since I've used it. Basically, it accepts ASCII numerations on the ASCII table. If you don't know what that is, go to ASCIItable.com. It's a breakdown of basically internet key codes for certain characters, like, say, the enter key on your keyboard is ASCII character 13. A, I believe, is 61, capital A. Lowercase a is a different one. Just add 26 to it. But anyway, characters are denoted for single character strings. Alright, I can't remember how to do it. This is starting out to be a very bad tutorial if I can't remember how to do cars. Let's see. Let's see if I can remember how to do this correctly. Apologize for the delay. That's not right. That ain't right either. Crap. I can't remember car. Anyway, I'm going to have to look this up. It's been that long since I've used the car keyword. Anyway, Stack Overflow and MSD and Microsoft are your friend. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you. This is a perfect example of to show you how to do this. Alright, so let me change my capture here to my Google window. Okay, maybe it can't capture Chrome. Anyway, let me Alright, so I'll tell you what. We are not going to cover car right now because for some reason I'm drawing an absolute blank on this. And car really is, it's a data type that holds ASCII characters, like I said, but it's a conversion. It's a data type conversion method that takes a single character number and turns it into the string equivalent of that. So basically, car breaks down to string. Okay, so there's one last one we're going to cover, and it's booleans, which is denoted as bool. Boolean is calling the class. Bool is the actual variable. Booleans are going to be your favorite ones. They're my favorite ones. I hope you love them like I do. But booleans are your true-false operators. So basically, anytime you have a scenario in your program to where something is going to say, if this equals true, then do this. Which is, I'm telling you, if you get into programming, if statements and Boolean operators are going to be used so frequently, you're going to get so used to doing it, it's going to become second nature, and you're going to type it out before you even realize it. But yeah, Booleans are your true or false. So to sum up, to go back over it, I'm going to give you literal uses for this, but just a little recap before we get into that is strings are your text operators. They're basically any text you want, any string, any kind of words you want to show up in your program, or any kind of word variables or text variables you have, they go in a string. Integers are your whole number variables, basically 1 through 99 quadrillion or whatever. Ants go really high. But yeah, they're your whole numbers. Doubles are your decimal places, but they're your low decimal places. In a double, I wouldn't go anything. Personally, you can do this if you want, but my personal choice is I wouldn't go anything over 2 decimal points with a double. That's just what's been ground into me ever since I was, learning coding. It's burnt me several times due to the inaccuracy of the rounding in doubles, so I stick to 2 or less when I do doubles. Floats are your highly accurate decimal points. If I got anything that I'm using over 2 decimal points for, I'm using a float for it. That's just me. That's 11 years in the field ground in to do it that way. So that's the way I do it. You do it however you feel comfortable doing it. But like I said, double and float are both decimal place numbers, but float is highly accurate and can hold more decimal places. So it's basically a double built for a bigger situation. Bool is your true or false operators. So basically, if you need anything true or false, bool's your guy to go to. That is the operators. That's how they work. That's what they're going to be. That's how they're always going to work. So, and the good thing about this is these operators are standard in pretty much every programming language out there. I say pretty much because there's some of them, double is called decimal, and some of them don't take floats. But for the most part, string, int, and bool are everywhere in every programming language. You can't get away from it. There you go. All right, so let's show you how these things work. All right, so string. We're going to set some text in here. Say, why not stick with the original? Welcome to the tutorial. And our number we're going to stick to 1 because it's the first tutorial. Why not? Double's going to be 1.0. Float's going to be, okay. Float's going to be 1.0 F. With a float, you have to stick F at the end of it. That's just C sharp. C sharp makes you stick F because that's how it denotes that it's a float over the double. That's how it tells the difference. So 1.0 F really means 1.0. Actually, we'll do this. We'll do a lot of decimal places so you can tell the difference. But yeah, float. The F at the end is just how C sharp realizes that it's a float and not a double. Bool is your basic operator. We'll leave it true. So we're basically going to say, okay, let's see. I want to show you how to use every one of these, but I don't want to go too far into detail to try to confuse people. So what you're going to see in here is you're going to see some examples of the system write line again that I showed you at the beginning. And I'm going to throw an if statement in here. I'm going to go into detail on it a little bit in this tutorial, but I'm going to go into if statements in great detail in a future tutorial. It's actually coming really soon because if statements are something you need to know a lot about, and you need to know about them fast because that's how programs work. See, I didn't get taught about if statements till pretty much the end of one of my semesters, and it hurt the entire semester. It would have been so much easier had we known about them in the beginning. So I'm correcting that mistake in my own right by go ahead and showing you if statements early. But I'm probably going to show them to you probably it'll probably be not next week, but the week after that. But anyway, without going into too much detail, let's show you how these work. So system dot, what's it, console dot write. Okay, so the difference between write and write line, write writes out your text. But if you have another write right under it, like you're doing two write-outs, it'll write out the text right beside each other. Now system.out-write line will write out your text and automatically append a new line, so your text will never be jumbled together and it always has its own line to sit on. So we're going to use write line for the purpose of this tutorial just so there's no confusion or jumbled text and it looks all nice and neat for you guys. But write line uses a string or a number or anything like that. So we're going to pass our str because write line is a method. It's basically this main is a method that accepts arguments. Well, this write line is a method that accepts a string. Or you see where it says 18 overloads right there. It can accept 19 different things. But right now, for the purpose, we're going to use just the base functionality and just pass it a string. We're going to pass it our str variable. And then we're going to do and we're going to wait 10 more seconds. Alright, so if we run this, welcome to the tutorial. You notice that we're passing string here, so your variable's getting passed to it, and it's showing you what you have in the value of that variable rather than having to type it out by yourself. That's the magic of variables for you. They help you out a lot. Alright, so let's do a little bit of math here. We're going to do a double. And we're going to say it is going to be the sum. And we're going to set it equal to our number. That's our integer data type up there, number, plus our double. So that's simple addition. So we're creating a new variable, another double variable, called sum. And it's going to be the total of number plus double. And we're going to write it out. So it should come up to 2.0. 2. It's chopping off the decimal point. So that's part of that rounding that I told you about in double. It cuts off some of the unnecessary data. But in some points you want to see that 0. In some points you don't. Alright, so that's how doubles work. Integers, and the sum of the int. That's okay. You'll notice how I do my typing and how most they're done with anytime you have a multi-word variable. It's called camel casing. Just basically make the first letter of every word capital. You don't have to do the first word like that, but make the first letter of every word capital so it's easier to read your variable names. Because some people like to make 50 character long variable names, And if they don't do the camel casing like this, it's very, very hard to read those variable names. And once you get into the field and you start seeing that and you start programming that, you'll understand why I say that. But just for ease of operation and to save you a headache later, just make the first letter of every word in your variable name capital, and then you can make it however you want it. Just save yourself some problem there. Anyway, integers. So we're going to do your basic kindergarten math problem, 2 plus 2. So our sum int is going to equal the value of 2 plus 2. So if we write out our sum int, it should say 4. There you go, it's 4. See? Right there. Oh, wait. Y'all, I just realized that y'all cannot see the console application. Okay, I'm going to do all this, not the whole tutorial, but I'm going to reset a window real quick to where you can see what's going on. So give me 1 second. All right, that should be it. No, that's not it. All right, 1 second. I am still working on it. I want to get the readout in Visual Studio so you can see what's going on. Because the console window that pops up, I just realized right now, 30 minutes into the tutorial, that you guys haven't been able to see it. So I apologize for that. I'll go back over all the write-outs so you guys can see what's going on. Let me make this really long for a minute so I can fix something. Visual Studio bugged out there for a second. Okay. I'm going to put this over here. This black screen that you're seeing on the screen now is our console window, so that when we run this program, you can actually see what's going on. So where were we? All right, we were. Let me start over with the string. All right. So the string output. Technical difficulties, you gotta love them. There we go. Welcome to the tutorial. We'll leave it like that. All right, so when we close this, that window should close. And now let's try to do our sum int. There we go. Number 4, you can see it right there in the top of the corner. It's really small on my screen, but it's there. Okay, so we're going to close that. All right, so basically we got your string write-out, and then we have our integer write-outs in the right line, and now we'll do our sum. So you can see that it is 2, because we're adding our number plus our double, which is basically our integer plus our double, which is 2, which, once again, this is the reason why I tend to use floats in that scenario, because the rounding is chopping off decimal points that aren't needed, and it rounds numbers up. I don't like that, So I tend to use floats over doubles, only use doubles when the number really doesn't matter that much and you're just trying to go for something. So anyway, now let's write out our float. See? 1.2.2 is chopping it because we're not doing our format number. Okay, when you're using a float, you can see that it's got 6 decimal places here, but really we have 7. It's cutting it to 6 because 6 is the default for float. However, there's a formatting structure you can do on floats that I'll go over later. I'm not going to go over right now because I don't want to go too in depth. But there's a formatting structure you can do on floats to get it to show the amount of decimal places you actually want it to show. So, but then again, unless you're doing something really, highly scientific or something like that to where you need to know the exact amounts down to the hundreds of millions of places, this is really going to work for you. I mean, it's pretty much going to work for you at any given time. So that's floats. And bool, you're going to have problems writing out a bool. See, normally, if it wasn't for Visual Studio and we were doing C# and some other IDE or compiler, it would throw an error right there because it wouldn't know how to interpret the value of the Boolean. But WriteLine in C# and System.console in Visual Studio takes the Boolean, sees that it's either true or false, and it writes out your equivalent in a string. So basically, this is where I was going to show you the little if statement that I was talking about. Alright, so an if statement goes like this. If, and then you have open and close parentheses. This is basically your parameters that are going into the if statement. So if our bool equals true, and an if statement is just like a method. It has to have, and if it is a method, basically, it has to have its open and close parentheses, unless, well, I'll get into that later. But for now, if statement has to have its open and close parentheses. So if our bool, our Boolean value is true, then we're going to execute this line, which basically I want to execute this. If it's not, we use the else keyword. So basically, if it's true, it's going to do this. If it's false, it's going to come down into this part of the if statement. This is all part of the same if statements. If and else are basically your two sides of a coin, heads and tails. So if it's not true, we don't want to write out bool. We want to write out false. Alright, so what you just see me do right here is a comment. I'm commenting out a line. What the comment does is basically, it's still in the code, but it's there for you only. It's there for the developer only. A comment is only a text string that you can see. It has no bearing or effect on the program, and the line will not get executed. So with this comment out, this write out will not work. So we're going to run this now. And you see it's true because our bool is true, so we're getting in here. Now if I set bool to false, if I could type, we're going to set it like this, but because the text value, the fact that it turns it to string of its value is going to kind of throw that off. And it could be confusing to some people, so I'm just going to write out it is true or it is false in the if statements so you know what's going on. So right now, as we stand, our bool, our Boolean variable is false, so we should get into this part of the if statement right here. So it is false. See, the console line, it is false. So we set it back to true. It is true. There we go. That's how if statements work. That's a very, very general explanation of if statements. But that's your basic data types. There was some points in here when it was really confusing. This is my first tutorial, so I apologize if I missed anything or if I overanalyzed or went over things too much or anything like that. If I was just generally confusing, I apologize. So here's what you do. Leave your comments below. I accept any kind of criticism. I welcome it. If there's something I need to work on, you guys let me know because I'm here for you. I'm not here for myself. Let me know what I need to work on and I will try my best to work on it. But anyway, that's it for data types. That's it for this week's video, or today's video. Our next video is going to come Tuesday, and we're going to cover, actually, we'll cover if statements in detail then, because I believe that's the next thing we need to go over. So next Tuesday is going to be our if statement tutorial, and that'll wrap it up. Guys, I appreciate you watching. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you'd like to be a supporter, you can visit my Patreon. I've got a link to the page in the description of the video down below. Or if you'd like to catch gaming live streams, I also do gaming live streams. You can check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/neuroshock88. There's a link to that in the description below as well. I stream Monday through Friday from 11 o'clock till basically whenever I get bored. Or whenever I've had enough of the game and I die too much on Fortnite and start getting aggravated. But anyway, shameless plug there. So anyway, that's it for today's video. I will catch you guys Tuesday. Thanks.